And now that you know a bit about Booleans and our comparison operators, in this video, you're going to learn about the if statement, which is going to allow you to conditionally run some code. So if some condition, execute some code. And to kick things off, we're going to bring it back to the example I brought up in the beginning of the last video. It's freezing outside, and I want to print a message letting you know. I already know whether or not it's freezing. This is either true or false, depending on whether it's freezing or not freezing. But how do I actually conditionally run some code? Well, we can mess around with that. What we're going to do right here is remove the console.log and add in an if statement instead. Now, much like defining a variable with a value using let, we have to follow a specific set of rules, the JavaScript syntax for creating a valid if statement. And it all starts with the if keyword. After the if keyword, we're going to type a space, and there are two things we have to provide. We have to provide the condition, and we have to provide the code to run if the condition is satisfied. So the condition would be whether or not it's freezing outside, and the code to run would just be the message that says it is freezing outside. Now to set up the bare bones if statement, we're going to have if space, then we're going to open and close some parentheses. We'll put something inside of there in just a second, then another space, and we are going to open and close a set of curly braces. And right here inside of the curly braces, we're going to hit enter. And this is the bare bones structure we're going to be using. The condition goes right here in the parentheses. The code to run goes right here in the curly braces. Let's go ahead and set up the condition first. So in the end of the day, the value that we put inside of here is going to be a Boolean. If we type in the Boolean true, this code in curly braces will always run. If we type in the Boolean false, the code will never run. In our case, we have a Boolean, but we're not going to type true or false right in here. We're going to reference is freezing, which is indeed a Boolean. We printed it in the last video and we saw it was. So right here is freezing. Now our if statement is going to check if is freezing is true. If it is, we're going to run this code. If it's not, we will not execute the code. Currently, there is no code inside of there, so let's add some. What we have here is called a code block. There are a lot of different ways we can create code blocks in JavaScript. An if statement is just one of them. This is a place where we can put as many lines of code as we like. I could create variables. I could add other if statements. I could go off and do other things using JavaScript that we haven't explored just yet. For now, though, let's just use something we already know about. Console.log. I'm going to print a string. It is freezing outside! Exclamation mark. Now, we typically nest our code blocks for readability. This code is perfectly valid, but if you use an automatic formatter, which we'll look at in a little bit, or you read anyone else's JavaScript code on the web, you're going to see something like this, where they use a tab or a set of spaces before each line in the code block. This makes things a lot easier to read when you're scanning a file. If freezing, run this code, it's easy to parse that out. So there we have it, our very first if statement. Let's go ahead and run it and make sure it actually works. Now with the temperature value of 32, I would expect the message to print. 32 is indeed less than or equal to 32. I'm going to save the file, and over here, run it. Node, boolean.js. When I run the file, what do I get? I get my message. It is freezing outside. Now let's change the temperature to not be freezing. I'll change it to a nice 80 degrees. Save the file and rerun things. This time around, I would expect to not see this message. I would just expect to see the two Booleans from the example down below. I'm going to rerun the program, and that is exactly what I get. So using an if statement, we were able to conditionally set up some code to run in JavaScript. And this is going to be super important in every single program we write. This is known as flow control. We're controlling the flow of our program using a series of if statements and conditions. So we're not always going to run the code inside of here, but sometimes we will. Now you can add as many if statements as you like, and we can actually simplify this one before adding a second one. What we have right here is a reference to is freezing. Is freezing is used only one time, and we have our comparison operator sitting right here. We can actually move the comparison operator into the parentheses and get rid of the need for is freezing altogether. Right here, I can add the comparison operator in temp less than or equal to 32. I can then remove the is freezing variable from above. This setup is exactly the same as the code I had just a few moments ago. In this case, we're just setting up the condition right inside. We know that it resolves to either true or false, so we're still passing true or false into parentheses, which is what the if statement needs. Now that we have one that prints when it's freezing, let's go ahead and add a second one together that prints when it's super, super hot out. Let's say if it's above 110 degrees, we want to let you know that you might want to consider not going outside. Right here, if. After if, we set up our parentheses. After the parentheses, we set up our curly braces and hit enter, and then we can start filling things out. What's the condition? Well, the condition is going to depend on the temperature. So temp. Is the temp greater than or equal to 110 degrees? 110. If it is, we are going to print a message. I'm going to indent and use console.log to print a new message. It is way too hot outside. Now I could add other lines on right here. In this case, we just happen to need one line for each, but to prove it, I could hit enter and use console.log to print testing 1, 2, 3. Now let's go ahead and see what happens. If I were to run the program with the second if statement in place, I would expect neither message to print since 80 doesn't satisfy either of those conditions. Over in the terminal. Whoops, there we go. What do I get? I get no message printing, which is correct. Now let's tweak that value. Up above, I'm going to move 80 to 180, which should indeed print the "it's way too hot outside" message. I'll rerun the script. And right here, I get "it's way too hot outside." I also get my second log, testing 1, 2, 3, and then I get my 2 Booleans from the example down below. Using if statements, we're going to be able to create complex programs. We're going to be able to insert things like validation, show an error message to the browser if the user's password has less than 9 characters, and things along that line. For the moment, what we're doing is not too crazy, but it's important to get the basics of the if statement down before we move on to more complex examples. Now that we have 2 examples in place, let's wrap up this video by introducing a little challenge requiring you to use if statements. We're going to continue building off of the example we set up down below, although we are going to delete all of these lines. The only thing we're going to leave in place is the age. You're going to set up an if statement for the children and the senior citizens and conditionally print a message for them. So right here, we have the age. I'll leave a little comment. If 7 or under, print message about child pricing. And you can print whatever you want for the message. You could say you're going to get the child's discount or something like that. Then you're going to have a separate one. If 65 or older, print message about the senior discount. And for this one, once again, the actual message itself isn't particularly important. You can just say something like you're going to get the senior citizens discount. So take some time to fill out both of those if statements and then test your work. With an age of 65, I would expect to see the senior citizen discount message, and then we can tweak it to a couple other ages and make sure all of the other cases work as well. Take some time to pause the video, knock this one out, test your work, and when you're done, come back and click play. All right, how'd that one go? I'm going to kick things off by creating the if statement right here for child pricing. If my parentheses, my curly braces, let's move into the condition. What exactly are we trying to check? Well, I'm going to use the less than or equal to comparison operator to see if they are less than or equal to 7. Right here, age less than or equal to 7. If they are, I do want to let them know about that child pricing. So console.log, you will get a child discount or any other message that seems appropriate. That is the first if statement. The second one down below that is going to be to check if they are a senior. If our condition, our code block. What's the condition here? Well, we are going to use our greater than or equal to comparison operator. If the age is greater than or equal to 65, what are we going to do? We're going to print a message. Console.log. You will get, whoops, make sure to toss that inside of quotes. You will get a senior discount. Excellent. The last thing left to do was to test your work. I can test this out by running the program after saving it. Right here, I would expect the senior discount message to print. I do indeed get that. Let's tweak the age to something like 64, which does not justify either of the discounts. I rerun the script, I get no second message, and then I'm going to switch it to a much younger age. Let's go with 6, which should get the child discount, and if I rerun it, this is exactly what we get. You will get a child discount prints. If statements are going to be a critical part of all of the real-world applications we end up building, since conditional programming is essential to doing anything meaningful. In the next video, we're going to take a deeper look at if statements. There are a few other things I want to explore, how we can add on other clauses to, for example, do something when a condition is not met. I'm really excited to get to that, so let's go ahead and jump right in.